Welcome to Relationship, where real-life couple Justin and Candise share their keeping it real perspective on the ins and outs of their personal and professional experiences, navigating the ups and downs of partnerships in life and business. They will also offer practical advice for maintaining strong, healthy, fun, and successful relationships in life and business. If you're ready for comedic and insightful exploration of life, love, law, business, and everything else in between, you're in the right place. Buckle up, it's going to be a wild ride. Here are your hosts, Justin and Candise.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Relationship. Tonight, we have Dr. Amini and Dr. Jarri Amini, a dynamic husband and wife duo who bring a wealth of expertise and passion to the field of dentistry. With over 19 years of combined experience, this pair has worked in various NHS and private practices across the UK, honing their skills in general dentistry and orthodontics. I remember my orthodontist. As co-founders of My Private Dentist, their mission is to provide patients with high-quality dental care and valuable advice on all aspects of oral health. Welcome to the show, guys.
Yes, welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having us. Yeah.
We always like to start off our podcast with just a brief introduction on who you guys are separately, and then how you guys came together and met, and also what made you decide to embark on this crazy journey that people always tell us, what are you guys thinking as a married couple going into business together? So let the audience know about you guys.
Well, it's funny that you say that, actually, because one of our dentist colleagues the other day was saying that they thought that we were particularly weird because we work together at the same practice. So we're dentists together. We're in business together doing My Private Dentist. And obviously we live together. So we spend a lot of time together. And they were like, it's quite weird that you don't hate each other or you speak nicely to each other. So, I mean, it works for us. We actually met at dental school in London. Jarri was a couple of years ahead of me, so graduated before me and moved up to Yorkshire. And then I moved afterwards, and then we ended up working separately. And after a few years, decided to work in the same practice. An opportunity came up, and we didn't know quite how that would work because I thought, am I going to get jealous if he has lunch with someone else and not me? Or, how is that going to be?
Right.
But we found a really good balance. Like at the beginning, because Jarri's a couple of years my senior, I would come home and I would have to debrief every patient that I'd seen, and then I'd want to talk about everything. And so work and home kind of spilled all into one. And that took a little while for us to sort of find a balance for that.
Right.
But now I think it works really well.
How long do you think it took you to find that balance?
Probably after a couple of weeks, Jarri kind of...
Oh my God!
Biting his tongue
for a couple of years.
Yeah.
You guys are lucky that you found that balance.
Well, I think very early Jarri would not bite his tongue so much and say, you know what, we need to just have a bit more time to do other things and not just talk about work all the time. So I think that was sort of a learning experience for me.
Yeah, I mean, even now we created 2 different WhatsApp chats between us. So if we're ever talking about work related stuff, it has to go in a specific chat. And if we're talking about home related, family related, it just goes in a different one. Otherwise, there's nothing worse than going through a conversation and then seeing 2-3 pictures of your children and then 2 or 3 pictures of patients' teeth instead. It's no, you need to keep these 2 things separate.
But that's the space that I like to live in, the blurred lines. If we instituted the 2 chat, WhatsApp chat groups, I would be breaking the rules and boundaries left and right. Justin would actually be like, excuse me, this is not the right chat group for this type of conversation. I'd be like, you know what? Whatever. I'm your wife, and this is what we're going to do. And so you have to indulge me on this right now.
Congratulations on the 2 chats, though. I don't think I could pull that off. Definitely not.
Idea, though.
Yeah, that's a reason.
Because if you have something with work related, that's easier to go back to rather than...
Exactly.
I see how that could work.
So let me
Sorry for introducing him to that.
So one of my favorite questions I like to ask my guests is, okay, give me your biggest growing pains in, when you guys first decided to go into business together. It doesn't have to be one, but you have a couple, because Jess and I sure as hell had many growing pains, but share some of your struggles and your growing pains.
I think one of the main ones initially, when we were actually just building our website, I would spend a lot of time trying to get into the technical side of it, and then just build certain areas and certain layouts and certain ways the plugins worked, of that side of things. And then probably 6 hours later, I'd go to Ambika and I'd say, "Oh, look at all this work I've been doing," and she'd be like, "Yeah, can you change this little bit?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm not really sure if I know how to do that because I'm not experienced in that stuff, right?"
And also maybe I didn't appreciate how long it had taken. So I would come in and say, like, "That's not right. That doesn't work. I don't like that. Can you change this for something else?" And I think that you'd find that really frustrating at the beginning until I actually kind of sat down and say, "Okay, well, how are you coding this? Okay, yeah, actually, that's quite hard. Maybe we'll just stick with what we've got." So definitely that at the beginning.
Yeah, and I was just like, maybe you need to start off by saying, "Wow, this looks really good. I'm really happy that you've put all this effort in," without diving straight into change this, do that, do this better. So,
I get that. I like the massage. I like to be like, "Wow, hon, that was a really great job. However, this is where you screwed up." It just sounds better. It makes you feel good, at least. I get it.
No, you want a fucking medal for everything you do. It's like, I feel like I have two kids. We have one child, a son. Yeah. And I feel like Justin's my second because I'm always like, "Good job! So amazing!" And it's just like the most ordinary thing, or at least to me. But my husband expects or I should say my partner expects that was amazing work. So now... Yeah.
I mean, it's not that hard to just give like a little bit. If it's, good job, that'd be all right. But I guess you guys are focused on improving things.
Yeah.
We want to just constantly evolve, and we have this sight ahead of us of whether it's a goal or tasks. We're very task oriented. And so we just want to check the box, get things done, solve the problem, and then move forward. Whereas guys I don't know that you're myopic about things, but you're a little bit more one-dimensional, or maybe just one task at a time. And
it's not one-dimensional.
I might be pissing off 95% of the male population in the world.
I mean,
sorry, but not sorry.
I would have accepted two-dimensional, but one-dimensional is just going too far.
The word linear, So let's just use a word that I'm not even sure what that really quite means. You guys are very linear, maybe, if that's a better word for it.
We're just awesome. That's the end of it.
Yes, you guys are awesome. Good job, Justin.
Right, and it's not a personal attack, right? They're just suggestions and improvements. So just don't take that personally.
Right.
And let me ask you a question. How many requests for improvements do you get on a daily basis?
Request for what?
Improvement.
Suggestions for improvement. Several.
How many love taps do you get a day? Let's make it sound really flowery. How many love taps do you get a day?
20 to 25.
About that.
Yeah. As long as she puts it on my to-do list, and then I just get this motivation to tick them off, then I'm happy to do that.
Well, I want to get down to the nitty gritty, because you guys run a dental practice together. And you also have a business that deals with dentistry. We both, as being dentists and lawyers, we're in a pretty saturated market. There isn't a shortage, let's say, of dentists and lawyers, let's say, out there. So if somebody were to say to you guys, all right, with all the competition that you have out there, what makes you guys so special? Why would somebody go to your practice?
So we don't actually own the practice.
Okay.
We both work in a practice together.
Okay.
But why they would come to our practice over others?
Yeah.
You're right. There is a lot of competition, but we've kind of built up some really goodwill We are really kind to our patients. We give them lots of time and attention. We have seen our patients for years. So you really build up a rapport. You get to know all of their families, you know, the holidays that they've been on. Dario, particularly good.
Yeah, I think the thing that I found about working in dentistry is it's not so dental specific in terms of people just want to have a chat sometimes, right? So like people will come in, they'll have their problems, you know, they'll have a problem with their tooth. But the thing that they appreciate more than anything is just, you know, especially we have a lot of older patients, somebody to talk to, somebody to just have a conversation. How was your holiday? How's your family? Things like that. Right. And when you have somebody who has been coming to you 2 or 3 times, and then you remember things about them and you can kind of bring them things up again, I think that is the most important part of having patients like you, patients come back to you, just being a people person and making sure that people feel comfortable in your presence. I mean, just the word dentist sends a shiver down most people's spine, right? Like, I don't know, you know, if it's the same worldwide, but definitely in this country, like the first thing that some people would say to you as soon as they come in is, I hate the dentist, right? So that's your starting point. And then you might say something like, oh, I hate dentists too, or something like that to them. And it just breaks the ice, right? Or, yeah, so it's just about like not being that stereotypical, very technical person who's just wanting to, you've got a problem and we're going to sort it out. It's about being a little bit more holistic.
It's that whole journey, isn't it?
Yeah, and just genuinely listening to people, being there for them, etc. I think that's what I would say I try to do to set myself apart from other dentists.
Well, and I love that, because I think that a lot of professionals can be very technical and very cold because, you know, especially when you're in a specialty and you've been training for so long in that specialty, it becomes so sterile, you know, and it becomes very robotic and sometimes even in certain industries, transactional, where I think that, you know, we need to bring back the humanity and the human side of things. But I want to take it a step deeper because you guys do happen to work in an industry in which a lot of people kind of shriek and you know, avoid going to, but is an absolute necessity. I mean, I remember growing up in Taiwan, I'm half Taiwanese. And, you know, when you grow up as a child in certain countries such as Taiwan, you know, we didn't have dental practices where kids would go to a pediatric dental practice where there's all these beautiful toys and, you know, all these pretty pictures and flat screens with, you know, with awesome cartoons and, you know, whatever it is that, you know, animations to watch and to keep the kids busy. And we also didn't, you know, really have the laughing gas and all that kind of stuff. So I had to suck it up. I mean, my parents would be like, suck it up, Buttercup. I had to sit down and get drilled with pretty much, you know, no massaging of any kind and no coddling. And I had to, you know, and so I have really traumatic, I have very, very traumatic experiences from my childhood that has kind of come full forward to where, because I just don't have the best memories of it, going to the dentist now, I mean, sometimes I have to have Justin come with me and hold my hand. And I'm a grown ass adult. So yeah, So in addition to,
I love the dentist, by the way. So
well, because you don't have work done, because you know they had fluoride in the water here in the United States.
The dentist growing up.
We didn't have any of that, so you know we weren't even required to go for cleanings. You know that wasn't a thing, you know, in Taiwan. So what? In addition to being and bringing the human side and delivering a certain type of customer service and communication. What is it what else do you do to kind of calm the fears of your clients? I mean, is there something that you do? Is there a technique that you use or, you know, anything that you guys have at your disposal that the clients have access to that alleviates their nerves and fears and calm them down?
I see a lot of children and I think only since I had children of my own, we've got two, a boy and a girl, and only since I had my own children did I really understand how to talk to kids.
Yeah.
So you go to dental school and you're taught to use all this flowery language, like, let me get the little umbrella. But it's only when you actually have children that you get it. And I see a lot of children who are super nervous. They might have decay and they need difficult treatment, right? They might need local anesthetic. They might need a tooth out. And to try and explain that to a really young child is probably one of the biggest challenges from my point of view, of dentistry.
Right.
And because I can kind of see it from a mother's perspective, I'm also sad inside that some child has to go through this procedure when it could be completely avoided.
Right.
So for them, yes, the humanity, but also just being able to take the time. You might have to see them 4 or 5 times and do nothing, or do very, very simple procedures and work them up till they're ready to have it.
Got it.
So we have, it's NHS in the UK. And for some services, some children that won't tolerate procedures, you can refer them for sedation or general anesthetic, but they might be waiting a year plus for that waiting list.
Wow.
So it's just not practical for kids that are up at night and crying and you need to do something about it. So one, being a mum helps because you can talk about all the cartoons that they're into and win them around that way. Stickers help, but also just introducing everything slowly, not surprising them, showing them what you're doing, maybe sending them away to come back another day and then try again. So you really need to be patient. And that is a real big struggle, especially because yes, there are services available, but when the waiting lists are so long, it's as if they're not available, right?
Right.
And we have private dentistry, but it's expensive and not everybody can access it. So
yeah, I think part of the website as well is trying to bring people who are anxious. Often I'll have people who have made the reception write in big letters, very anxious on there. And after spending 10 to 15 minutes, I wouldn't say the anxiety level goes completely, but it does drop down quite a lot. And I think one of the things about that is just meeting the person who is going to be helping you.
Right.
So what we try to do by having these profiles on My Private Dentist is to try to show a face to somebody before actually going into that environment, and trying to work on, of course, we talked about the human side of things that can only happen when you meet somebody, but just giving a little bit of a bigger picture to every patient who's feeling anxious, who needs to have treatment, to give them the opportunity to see somebody before the actual day.
And help the audience really understand, because we in the United States take for granted of the fact that we don't have a national health system. And so I really want to understand intricacies of the process by which somebody would get the dental care that they would need over, let's say, in the UK, and how that, and explain how that weaves in with the website. Like, so take us from the process of, a person needs dental care. What happens next, let's say, in the UK?
Okay, so I think if we're going to get into the nitty gritty of everything, I'm more than happy to do that.
But we love the nitty gritty.
In the UK, we now have a shortage of dentists. Just generally across the board, we have a shortage of dentists. One of the main things that happened was Brexit. So we had a lot of dentists from the EU who had come over to England. So they'd come from Lithuania, Ukraine, Poland, these areas across the European Union. They'd come to help treat patients on the NHS. Unfortunately, well, some people think fortunately, Brexit happened. And then a lot of these dentists who had come over lost their work visas, or it just wasn't the same for them to live and work in the UK, and they left.
Okay.
What was happening? So there was like a lot of dentists. The other thing that happened was when there was an over subscription, let's say, of dentists in the UK, some of them actually did leave to go to Australia and other places around the world to work. Now what's happened is there's a shortage of of dentists, but there's not a shortage of patients. There's not a shortage of problems. And you have certain areas which are more, I wouldn't say lucrative, but people want to work in city centres, right? They want to, if you're a dentist, you want to work in London, you want to work in Birmingham, you want to work in Manchester, the big areas. You don't want to work in the sticks. You don't want to work in like rural areas as such. But them areas still have high needs, right?
Okay.
But it means that there will be areas that just there's no dentists living and working there at all. So patients are having to travel for quite a long way just to see a dentist. Then so in an ideal world, everybody who needed to see a national health dentist because that's all they could afford, or they were entitled to that treatment, they should be able to see one.
Right.
But that's not happened. So now what you're getting...
Why is there a shortage of UK dentists? So why wouldn't anybody, so forget about, Brexit or anything. You just look at the UK. Why is there a shortage of dentists just within the UK?
Comes down to funding.
Okay.
So government resources for dentistry hasn't gone up in 10 years or more, but prices of everything has gone up.
Okay.
Lots of dentists are turning to private dentistry.
Okay.
So if there are dentists here, they get paid better, they're able to afford longer time, resources are better, there's less pressure working in the private sector.
Okay.
So what
percentage of the UK population would you say can afford private dentistry? If you can get it doesn't, have to be accurate. I won't hold you to it.
25%?
Yeah, I'd say it's becoming more accessible because more practices have got payment plans and things like that. Also, there is a cost of living crisis over here, but access to NHS dentistry is dwindling. So people are on waiting lists for an NHS dentist for 4 or 5 years. So if they So if they have a problem, their hand is kind of forced. So people are getting to private dentistry a lot more.
Yeah. It's not a choice that they're making. It's out of necessity, really. This is the case for, children who are in pain as well. If your child's in pain and they need some work doing, you may have been able to get some work done on the NHS before, but now either the practices are not taking NHS patients because they've handed back their NHS contracts because they feel like the remuneration, the funding they were getting was not enough. So they've just given back the contract and saying, we're going to just concentrate on our private patients, which leaves a massive gap because there's obviously so many people who have the need who can't then get access to treatment.
So in theory, NHS dentistry is a beautiful thing. It means that everybody in the UK has access to free for under 18s or heavily subsidized treatment.
Right.
But reality, there are so many patients out there that need a dentist that can't get one. In our practice, we ran an access session. So a patient that isn't registered and they're in pain, they could come in once every so often. And you see patients that really, really need a dentist. You'll see them, they'll have multiple teeth that need taking out, or they're in a lot of pain, abscesses everywhere. But in the NHS dentistry, once a patient's in the system, they can be seen every 3, 6, 9 months, and they might not have any issues.
Right.
So there's a problem here where people that are very stable perhaps don't need to see an NHS dentist as much, are getting in and they're in the system. But there's a big cohort of people that really need help and they can't get anyone.
Can I get in for 1 second? Hi, everybody. I'm Justin Cernan. Nice to meet you, Michelle. I do have a question. I'm going to raise my hand. So based upon the fact that there's such a shortage, what type of patient caseloads are you dealing with on a daily basis? Is it like crazy, amounts of patients you're seeing per day? And you're not obviously seeing the same ones constantly because there's such a waiting list. I mean, what is that like, dealing with just, it must be almost like an emergency room full of patients almost, that need dentists.
Right, it can be. And even the patients that are now accessing private dentistry because they think that they feel like they don't have a choice because they can't wait for NHS, they would be coming in, and it's not they're coming in for a checkup and they might have one issue, they might have 5 or 6 issues. So the dentistry is becoming really complicated, which is then not helping anybody's anxiety or, phobia of the dentist, because their experience isn't necessarily the easiest. We're having difficult conversations that, you might lose a tooth, or, you might have to have a root canal procedure, which there are horror stories of, even though, it's safe, it's a lovely, good procedure, but there are so many stories about it, right? So if a patient could just access and see us, and they might come in, they might need a filling, a clean, and it's a nice experience.
Right.
You're seeing less of that, and you're seeing patients where you're taking on a big workload to even try and get them dentally stable.
But I've never had it before where even today, for example, my list was full and I had 3 patients come to the door just asking to be seen because they were in pain. And one of them was, yesterday there was a lady who was 88 years old. Today there was a man who was 96 years old. You are not going to turn these people away.
No.
You're not going to say, go away. And they say they've been in pain all night. They've not been able to sleep. And then I understand the pressure then goes, because the reception then passes it on to us. We hear the story and then we ask them to sit and wait. But then you have to juggle all of that throughout the day. So the solution would be more dentists, right? So training up more dentists. We have, I think, 12 universities in the UK, and they take on, say, 100 new students a year. You would have to double the amount of students that they take into these dental schools. But then again, it just comes down to funding, right? The government would need to subsidize, because I think it costs something like £150,000 to train a dentist, and the dentist through a student loan will pay about 40,000 of that, and then 110,000 is through government support.
Right.
So if you then multiply the numbers, so this is a problem going all the way back to we need more dentists. Well, everything takes more money, right? And even if you pumped it in now, well, in 5 years' time, then dentists would come out and then start to be able to treat the local population. But then there's no control over whether them dentists who come out might emigrate to a different country and work there. So then have you really resolved the problem?
Yeah.
That's a difficult thing. And that leads me to this question. You had mentioned that you discovered that there's still a void between the NHS and even the private practices, that there's still that big void of people that still don't have access. I always say, in our practice, we always take a collaborative approach, because we always believe that 2 heads are better than 1, 3 heads are better than 2. Since you guys are, partners in life and in business, have you guys sat down and figured out how to address even that void between the current private practice situation and the NHS? Because it seems as if somebody can figure out the solution to that void, not only from a human side of problem solving, but also the business side of problem solving. Is there that eureka moment where you're both like, oh, well, this is, this could be the big $1 million solution of bridging the gap or filling that void between the NHS and the current private practice? Food for thought. If if that big moment hasn't, the light bulb hasn't flashed in solving that problem, that is food for thought of what it is that you guys could potentially, this could be big for you guys to address that problem.
Without we're not trying to plug the business that we've set up or anything like that, but in a way it does kind of go into that void in between, because essentially in the UK, people are not used to having a private dentist. So even for them to say my private dentist, they've been saying for years, for generations, my NHS dentist, right? So it's almost helping people, because in a way, it looks like the problem with NHS dentistry, it looks like there won't be a solution to it. So say if NHS dentistry was to collapse and the government said, look, we can't fund it anymore, all dentistry in this country is going to be private, then it almost could just give that little bit of a helping hand to people to help them to transition, to find that who's going to be my private dentist.
Right.
There's this, but then it's not always necessarily a bad thing. The silver lining is, well, you've always been going to this one place because it's cheap, but there's actually an option of this person, this person, this person, and this person who can help you. And now you get to choose which one it can be. And then hopefully, if people have a choice in an area and that choice is well known, then we won't see the prices going extortionately high, because everybody can see, well, if this person, this person, this person are charging £80, but this person charging £250, well, I'm not going to go there. So I think the more information that a patient can have about their local areas, about their options, I'm not saying that this is like the silver bullet that you're talking about that's going to resolve the problem, but it might just help to bridge the gap a little bit.
Right, because access to information, I mean, knowledge is power. So, so that's a really, really great thing on it. We're, almost approaching that time, but I don't want to end this podcast with you guys without asking the question that we always like to conclude our podcast with, which is, what has been your biggest lesson or biggest takeaway learned thus far in your experience, either in your practice or in your lives, or both? So both of you, I want to know, and they may be the same, they may be different, but I want to hear from both of you what your best life lessons are.
And while you're thinking, note to self, if I have a toothache in the UK, I'll probably just wait to get home to the States. See, it's a pretty long time.
Just go on myprivatedentist.com and we
that's what we go to here. So if that would be the perfect scenario of going on to My Private Dentist. There you go. So what's your best lesson learned so far?
Well, I mean, I don't know why, no matter if I want to enter into a marriage, I choose this person that sat next to me. Or if I want to buy a house, I buy it with this person. If I want to choose a car. And I had this idea of starting a business. For some reason, I think there's some people that you work well with, right? And a lot of people might have said to us, don't go in business together. A lot of people also said to us, like, don't work in the same practice, like, you'll get sick of each other or whatever. But I think whether it be like running a household, which is like running a business sometimes, whether it be working together, it's all about communication, respecting one another. And, just if you have an idea or another person has an idea, you might think it's good, might think it's bad, but taking the time to listen to that other person is important. The funny thing is, we do a lot of things together. The only thing that we don't do together is I like watching football, as in like soccer. You guys call it soccer. Yeah. And she doesn't like that. And she just goes crazy at me, like if I'm watching the match or something. And I'm like, look, we work together, we live together with our family, You want us to have the same hobbies as well? Like, we can have different hobbies, right?
It'd be better. Yeah, I would go with that. I would say the biggest lesson for me in terms of us working together is playing to our strengths. So we're both good at different things and we both don't need to be good at everything. So Jarri's particularly creative. He's really good with art. He can make things look beautiful. I am probably better with more technical with words or, making something sound nicer or read better. And I think...
Read better? Is that even like a good sentence?
Read well.
Read well.
Okay. Yeah, right? So I think for me, that's been the biggest lesson, to appreciate and understand where I might need help and I might need to come to someone else and find that. And actually where I can take the lead because I know what I'm doing here and you need to let me take the lead in that. And we're getting better at that, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, it's constant growth, right? I never want to be complacent. So the moment where I kind of feel like everything is going well, I kind of feel like it's not going well because, I almost feel like we need to have a constant state of evolution, which requires conflict, which requires problem solving, which requires kind of sometimes being at the edge of our seats to actually feel like you're moving the needle in the direction that you ultimately want it to be. Otherwise, it's kind of like everything's kind of, great and mundane,
it's funny,
normal. And
we'll have a project that we're working towards and we'll say, I can't wait for us to finish this project and we can just sit and everything will be great. And then you'll be happy for a day or two and then you'll say, what are we going to do next? Because we need to move on to the next thing. So you always think, I think so.
But, through new innovations, new ideas and growth, you're going to repeat the cycles of conflict. Again, figuring out in this new project what each of our strengths and weaknesses are. In this new project or endeavor, how do we figure out how everybody's going to stay in their lane? And so I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. And, I think that your lesson learned, thus far in your journey is very similar to ours and a lot of the people that we have interviewed. So I think that's just normal and that's beautiful and growth and evolution. So I love that. So I thank you guys for sharing. I really appreciate it. And it was nice to meet you. I kind of feel like we're intruding on your sleep. Like what time is it?
It's
9:40 in the evening. Well, we kind of have to plan things around our kids' bedtime. So
no, 9:40. No, not yet. I just give you. We are recording.
We're still recording.
No, but I feel like 9:30. I'm in my first REM cycle. In the United States. So I appreciate you guys, and Justin kind of prematurely ended it when I wasn't ready to end.
I thought it was ending.
But we're gonna stop recording, but I want you guys to just stay on for just a second so we can kind of, properly say goodbye to you. But thank you so much for, being a part of Relationship.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
That's a wrap for this week's episode. Don't miss next week's episode for more relatable, real, and practical insights from Relationship, packed with even more candid conversations. So make sure to subscribe, tune in, and keep your wine glass full. And if you want to share your own experience or ask a question, follow us on social media and feel free to reach out. Go to cernitslaw.com, call 888-68-DAMAGE, or email us at cshanbron@cernitslaw.com or jsernitz@cernitslaw.com.